Why would you buy a Switch when you can get a Steam Deck? Steam Deck has more games. Nintendo's being greedy. Where's the OLED screen? Get a Steam Deck. Maybe I should just get a Steam Deck. It's so funny because I think the Switch 2 is the fastest selling console ever. I think there were 3 times more Switch 2 sold than PS4s in the first 24 hours. Clearly, a lot of people are buying a Switch 2, but there's also a lot of people saying this is not worth the money and you should get yourself one of these instead. So I'm here with a Steam Deck OLED, with a Switch 2, to try and figure out which is best and if everyone is right and that this is better. Okay, so why is the Deck arguably a better alternative? Well, it's similarly priced, and in fact the LCD version of the Deck is cheaper, the OLED's a little bit more, and like the Switch 2, it's easy to use, it has a good screen, good performance, expandable storage, and it's perfect for chucking in your backpack and taking on a flight with you and gaming on the go. Although you'll notice I'm using my Tech Chat mug here as a stand because it does not have a built-in kickstand. The Switch 2 gets points for having a good stand, but both are dockable for use with your big screen TV, both have tons of great games, although the Steam library obviously is a lot bigger, but really that's where the most meaningful similarities end. These are, despite both being, handheld PC gaming console things, they're quite different beasts. So the wisdom in the comments seems to go with the Steam Deck and, PC handhelds generally are amazing for the more tech-savvy PC gamer who already has a big library of Steam games, or perhaps even enjoy modding or emulating older games. Whereas the Switch 2 is the very clear upgrade path if you already own a Switch, which you probably do because they sold over 150 million of them. The funny thing is, the Steam Deck is considered the easy, accessible, pick-up-and-play handheld out of all the other PC gaming devices like this, just because it runs SteamOS and not Windows. But then the Switch 2 comes along, it's the ultra pick-up-and-play easy option. It's thinner, it's lighter, you get those all-important Nintendo exclusives, tons of family-friendly games, and without having to mess around with any settings and mapping controls, it's a cozy, locked-down ecosystem. But I think there's a not insignificant market out there of people, you guys who own a Switch, who would also perhaps enjoy a Steam Deck even more than this. I mean, just for starters, SteamOS does a fantastic job of streamlining the PC gaming experience with a really fast and responsive UI. We have the Deck verified games, so you know what's going to run well. Specifically, you've got verified games, which should run and play really well, and then below that, you've got playable, where it may require some fiddling in the settings, and then you've also got unsupported or unknown. The Deck is also digital only. You can't go out and buy a physical copy of a game and put it in here like you can with the game cards. This is just simple. It's just digital only, and also generally a whole lot cheaper. Like, this is one of the biggest selling points for me. With this, you're locked into Nintendo's online store. You have to pay 60, 70 pounds for a game. Even the Welcome Tour game is like £7 or $10. With this, you have the Steam library. And of course, you can still pay full price for games, but there is such a huge catalog. There's always deals and, Steam summer sales and things. In terms of value for money, even though this OLED version of the Steam Deck is a little bit more expensive than this, when you factor in the games, this is a lot better value. Let's talk about the design. And if you are a Switch owner, you know its biggest selling point is the flexibility with these detachable Joy-Cons, which can just be used like a normal controller attached to the handheld, but can also be detached with the lovely new magnetic system, giving you instant 2-player split-screen fun. Just flip out the kickstand or drop it into the bundled dock, and away you go. And you can use the Joy-Cons as controllers with motion control or in the grip pad. And with the new optical sensors in these Joy-Con 2s, they can also work like a little mouse in supported games, which makes things like aiming or moving around in, say, Civilization much more precise. But of course, one of the highlights of the Switch 2 is the new Game Chat feature, which also works with the new Switch 2 camera, which you have to buy separately, which streams your beautiful face in games like Mario Kart, so your little face is there above your cart and people can see each other's reactions. It's a bit of fun, it's social, but I don't know how often I'd actually use this. It's just like the Switch 2 does everything really well and easily. Like, you've got the dock bundled, and you therefore can hook it up to the TV, and we'll talk more about that later because the dock for this doesn't really do all that much. Plus, it has a bigger 7.9-inch screen. It's 120 Hz. We get VRR, neither of which we have on this. And it is significantly thinner and also a good deal lighter. Even though this is obviously a lot bigger than the original Switch, it's a different beast. And like the Steam Deck, it doesn't have detachable controllers. Yes, you have the trackpad on here, which actually is quite useful, and we don't on that, but you've also got the mouse Joy-Con thing. Anyway, slightly different, but you can't detach them. There's no bundled dock, there's no kickstand built in. Obviously, there are accessories you can put on it. Having it docked doesn't do an awful lot. It doesn't improve the cooling or the performance of the chip, unlike with the Switch. It also has a smaller, lower resolution. We're talking 800p rather than 1080p resolution. 60 Hz for the LCD version, 90 Hz for the OLED, although this does get brighter at around 500 nits versus about 450 on this guy. So in terms of the screen, I would say versus the LCD version of the Steam Deck, this is so much better in every way. But if you do go for the 90 Hz OLED version, it's brighter, it's much punchier, you get those inky deep blacks. Yes, this has VRR, high resolution, higher refresh rate, so in many ways this is a better gaming screen, but in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, having played a lot of both of these, I would take the Steam Deck with the OLED screen over this. I mean, come on. Look how good that looks, Oblivion Remastered, on that OLED screen. And beyond that, the deck has larger storage options. You can get it with 512 or even a terabyte. There's 2 touchpads. We get 4 extra buttons on the back. And while it is significantly chunkier, a lot of that, although not all of it, is because we have these grips at the back, which make it so much more comfortable to hold. I really do feel like with the Switch, because of the size, I just want something to be able to sort of cup my fingers round, to grip onto. You know, I'm sure we'll have accessories and there'll be cases and things that will do that, but just using it as they come, they're both very nice, but when it comes to picking one up and playing games, this feels more comfortable. And if you do buy the official Steam dock, or even a cheaper third-party one like I have here, you can use it like a console with your TV at up to 4K resolution. Although for most games, you'll want to stick to 1080p, because otherwise it'll destroy your frame rate. SteamOS also has some useful apps, as well as a ridiculous number of games. The entire Steam library is at your disposal. I mean, Sony's been really busy porting games like Spider-Man 2, God of War, Horizon Forbidden West, Last of Us to PC, and this has access to all of them, which you'll never see on a Nintendo console. And of course, you can even stream games on this from your PC or a cloud gaming service like Xbox Gaming. You get more control over the graphics, there's a proper desktop mode, and it runs Linux, which means you can, if you want to tinker, install extra game launchers, console emulators. It can be a bit fiddly, but it opens up a huge world of other games to explore and means you're not exclusively tied to Steam. And not just that, but Steam Workshop support means access to huge numbers of mods, meaning you can massively expand your experiences. But obviously, if you're like, I want to play Zelda and Mario Kart, and that's all down to you. If you're a big Nintendo fan, you love the exclusives, you have a big library of the original Switch 1 games, which you can still play on this, but now with a bigger screen, and in most cases, better performance as well, although it depends on the patch. If you play your Switch 1 every day, then you're probably going to play your Switch 2 every day and have a better time. To be honest with you, unless you have to play Mario Kart World right now, or you really have a itching to play Tears of the Kingdom again, but in better quality with higher frame rate, you could probably wait a little bit, see if there's some deals, wait for more games to come out. It's early days for the Switch 2, but there will be plenty of exclusives to come. Definitely better speakers on the Steam Deck. They're front firing rather than bottom firing, louder, bit bassier, bit richer. Both are absolutely fine. Put a pair of headphones in, but Steam Deck has better speakers. Ooh, I don't know. Hogwarts Legacy running on both. Now, the Switch 2 had a really big update for Hogwarts. Actually, it looks really good now on here. It looked terrible before on the original Switch. Actually, this is closer to the PS5 version of the game. Now, what's interesting is that obviously the Steam Deck is limited by the 800p resolution. We've got 1080p on this Switch. And just looking at them, the Switch does look a little bit sharper. It's obviously the high resolution screen. It could also be something to do with the fact that it's using DLSS rather than FSR on the Steam Deck. However, I am getting a smoother frame rate on the Steam Deck, and that's partly because I can actually change the settings. I can go into the graphics options and change it around. So what I've done here is kind of match it to roughly 30 FPS, which is what they're aiming for on the Switch 2, 30 FPS 1080p. Doing the same on the Steam Deck, I think is closer to sort of medium-high settings. I'm actually getting about 40 FPS. But of course, I could lower those settings and get even higher frame rates, so I could have a smoother experience. With the Switch, this looks very nice, but you can't tweak it. You can't lower the res and go for a higher frame rate. OLED, IPS, this is much brighter. These are with their brightnesses maxed out. Also, I think the OLED has better viewing angles as well. In terms of the actual sharpness in the game, I'm going to give it to the Switch. This does look higher resolution. Cyberpunk, both very nice looking games. And actually, yes, they're not going to compete with a PS5 Pro or a high-end PC, but you can play Cyberpunk on a Switch or a Steam Deck. Now on the Switch, you've got quality and performance modes. Quality targets 1080p 30, performance goes for 720p 40, although there's a bit of dynamic resolution shifting there as well. On the Steam Deck, there is a Steam Deck preset in the graphics option, which is great. It means it's been sort of tweaked and refined for this. And right now, I'm getting about 45 FPS at 800p with FSR upscaling, of course, with that preset mode. They both look very good. There's little bits of difference in level of detail. Draw distance, I would say the Steam Deck looks a little bit better. In terms of image quality, it's also running more smoothly. But just like Hogwarts, you can tweak the settings to get that sort of frame rate image quality balance that you want. They're both very playable. I personally would go with the Steam Deck. I think it's a slightly higher quality image. I think you're getting a smoother frame rate. You have more options in the graphics. Also, it's just nicer to hold and use. I prefer the thicker, more tactile thumbsticks and the triggers and the buttons at the back here. Switch is very nice. You can, of course, take the Joy-Con off, use it like a mouse, motion controls. It's fine, absolutely fine, but I would probably take the Steam Deck. One issue I have with the Steam Deck is, well, you can buy an official dock, you can buy third-party docks. It doesn't really improve the performance of the deck itself. It just charges and gives you a display output. So this is Cyberpunk running on my monitor here via the Steam Deck, but if we switch to my HDMI input, it'll bring up the Switch too. And when it's docked, it makes a huge difference. We're talking double the GPU clock speed, the slight bump to the CPU, a third faster memory bandwidth, and it actually boosts the wattage of the Switch from 15 watts to 20 watts. So it's significantly more powerful when docked. Obviously that's to allow it to run at 4K on your big TV, although Cyberpunk still seems to be limited to 1080p 30, regardless of handheld or docked. But it does seem a little bit smoother. Perhaps they're using slightly less aggressive DLSS or tweaking the settings. It's hard to know because you don't really have many graphics options on the Switch. But that is a big win for me. If you're going to use your console docked or with your big screen TV, the Switch 2 really comes into its own. I'm not going to waffle on. I'm going to show you the difference between the LCD Steam Deck and the OLED Steam Deck and why you have to pay a little bit more to get the OLED. Look at that. The reflections, the colors, the brightness, viewing angles, all day long, get the OLED. As for battery life, well, the Switch won. After an hour of Cyberpunk, this dropped down to 52%. This was still on 63%. So you'll get about 2 hours 10 on the Steam Deck and about 2.5 hours on the Switch. That's in Cyberpunk in that particular settings and game. So it will vary based on the game you play, the brightness, things like that. But I would say between sort of 2 and 6 hours. It all depends on the game. But I will say the Switch lasts just a little bit longer. So the question was, why not get a Steam Deck instead of a Switch 2? And in my case, I'm lucky enough to have both and I'm having a fantastic time. I think if I only had, £400 to £500 and I could only buy one, I would go for a Steam Deck. Much more variety in terms of games. You have the Steam OS library, you can install third-party stores, you can stream games. It's also much cheaper when you factor in the price of games. That is worth considering. And I also just prefer how it feels to hold in my hand as I'm playing games, and I do love this OLED screen. Do not get the LCD version of this. However, if you want to play Mario Kart and Donkey Kong and Zelda, then you're going to have to get yourself a Switch 2. It is fantastic. It's selling like hotcakes, and I think you can have a great time. The hardware is amazing. I love the Joy-Cons, the kickstand, it's thinner, it's lighter. Massive upgrade in terms of the screen over the original Switch, and performance mode, particularly when docked, really, really good. As it always does with these console side-by-sides, it's going to come down to the games you want to play. But for me, yeah, I'm going to take a Steam Deck OLED. But what about you? Which one would you go for? Let me know in the comments below. And I will also leave links if you fancy checking these out in the old description.